humility driven approach. It's not like there's this weird power differential where you're on top lecturing people on what to do. It's like you're going a couple steps beyond meeting them where they are, which you have to do initially anyway. But you're like, no, I'm going to work with you also. I'm not going to work next to you. I'm going to work with you, right? And I'm definitely not above you. That's really remarkable. I think it's critical if we're going to learn how to be leaders that we have to do what we're expecting of others. We ourselves have to do, and showing it first is crucial. Good on you for doing that.
Yeah, and I think if you have that attitude and you understand that, the only way to, I guess, fulfill that purpose is to make sure that you're as equipped as possible to do that, right? To have an understanding of the people that you work with and the environment that you're in. But then you have, at least with me, is like you have the desire to upskill yourself in any aspect possible to make sure that what I'm doing with them, the service that I'm providing to them, is that that I've improved myself in every aspect of my coaching to make sure that I'm providing that service as best as possible to them.
And if you do that long enough, it eventually makes you elite. You become exceptional because you're so improved, but you're doing it not because you want to become elite. You're doing it because you need to just be better for everyone, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, as much as that's obvious at the professional level that you always want to become better at what you do and what you know, I think for me, it became more apparent working with the youth. Like, do I really have all the answers yet? Do I really understand the nuances of all these aspects to provide these incredible people with everything that they need? And I think having that mentality makes it much better as a youth coach. Instead of just like, I have all the answers, I played at a high level, this is what you should be doing. I think just being hungry to always want to learn is really important.
Well, you're not cloning a bunch of other younger Craig von Wiellighs. You're trying to make them the best they could be just simply through your experience and your lens. But you're not trying to like corral them into being what you think they should be.
Exactly. One thing that I always like to say is like, my goal with the teams I work with is like who each of those individuals become as a result of the chase. Yeah.
Real growth and opportunity, not just field measured growth and opportunity.
Exactly.
That's super cool. I want to shift gears a little bit here because this is a mental health podcast. And we're going to talk about a little bit of mental health stuff. You have experienced some people in your life who dealt with mental illness and they were struggling pretty significantly. And I guess that's probably what piqued your interest in what Safiso wanted to get you on board with, not only just the psychological aspect of sports, which is cool. I love talking about leadership and stuff, but specifically as it relates to the profession of mental wellness. Share some of what you were sharing in the beginning before we started recording, please.
Sure. So I think my first real exposure to it was I had a girlfriend between the ages of when I was, I guess, 21 and 24. And she kind of went into a depressive state, I guess, the last year that we were together. And I think just how, at the time, if I'm blunt about it, like how taxing it felt for me just trying to support and understand what she was going through without being exposed to previously. I think that was my first understanding of like what it was like for people, because obviously at the time when you have someone you care about, you try to understand like what is it and why are you sad and why are you starting to get out of bed in the morning, or what can I do, how can I fix this? And especially I guess with the personality that I have is like I want to help, like I want to understand, and that's probably made it worse, I guess, at the time. And then not too long after that, one of my best friends committed suicide. I remember the moment very clearly. It was actually it was like what would be the dream day in my profession. Like the first team of Ajax were playing a international friendly, if you want to call it that, against Manchester United, the massive English club. And that's the club that I'd loved since I could remember, like since 5 or 6 years old. That was the club that I supported. And this day they were in Cape Town. We were going to play in front of a sold out stadium. And this incredible time that I get to experience. And I remember at the hotel before the game, we're having a pre-match meal, and I got a phone call from another really good friend of mine telling me what had happened. And the rest of the day is a blur. Like I remember nothing except that phone call. But those two people, I guess, who were super close to me, kind of opened up my curiosity, if you want to call it that, but also knowing that I need to understand this more, and I want to be more prepared, so that when I have those interactions with friends or family, but also the players, I guess in the future I'm going to work with, that I have some tools just to be there, to be present, to understand possibly what they're going through, and obviously guide them in the right direction if they need professional help. But just, I'm going to be closer to them than a professional is at the time. So just understanding what's going on around them.
Where are you with your own personal competence as far as what you used to know, what you know now, where you'd like to be, and the role that you want to play for the people you mentor, the players, but also your friends and family?
Yeah, I think 10 years worth of learning and studying and listening better than I was at that stage. But I think right now I gravitate towards understanding the mental game a little bit more. From a sports point of view, yes, but also from a people point of view. It's just that the conversations that I like to have with people, colleagues, with the podcasts I listen to, all of those things, a lot of it is tailored towards, I guess, mental health and psychology. So just trying to learn those things along the way. Having two really good friends who are professionals in the industry, and really trying to tap into them as resources and try to understand it at a deeper level. I think it's been 10 years worth of progress to understand that at a deeper level, so that even in my friendships, even in those closest to me, is that I can offer a different perspective because I have more awareness about what they're going through.
That's critical. It's just having an awareness and being able to know what you're doing. My favorite word in counseling is intentionality. Know why you do what you do. It puts you in charge of your behaviors at that point, if you can reasonably know what the words that are coming out of your mouth and what purpose they serve, and the behaviors you choose and that kind of thing. And I think the idea here is like, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And so you're like always growing and always learning. But as long as you can be intentionally present, intentionally directive when you give somebody a suggestion or send them somewhere, that's when you can create the most opportunity, or the biggest opportunity for the most benefit. So what I'm hearing from you is you've gone through this growth process. You've become more personally aware of how you tick, but also how other people tick. And then that makes you a little bit more flexible to serve people's needs in a different way. So the more you consume, the broader your ability becomes to do that. What are some ways that that's manifested in your life in the last few years as you've gone through this process of growth?
Sure. So many. I think first and foremost is just, as you explain, is while you're being intentional, it's also about being humble enough to understand that you don't have the answers, and vulnerable as well, right? I think that's important as a leader to understand that you don't have the answers, and being vulnerable to self-reflect on what you're delivering, and then understand, okay, I need to understand this more. I need to research. I need to speak to people. But I guess some of the main ways I've seen it manifest would be the conversations that I have with individuals over time. As I explained earlier, there's so many different aspects that they're exposed to, from the pressure of college showcases, like them thinking that one game is going to dictate their future because a college coach saw me on the side of the field and I'm going to get this like college scholarship to go. And that's the reason my parents have paid like $10,000 over the last 8 years for me, right? So you have that end of the spectrum. And then you have the end of the spectrum where it's people, especially I guess in the girls setting, are struggling with things in school and socially because of all the pressures that they go through social media and peer pressure, and just like, I guess, where we are as a society right now. And I think my journey for the most part has come down to like, how can I help them in each of those individual situations? And what tools can I provide? And a lot of it, I think, is as I said earlier, is just being process oriented. Like, what can they focus on in this minute in time? Like, what can they control? And I think that's really important. And making sure that I think the way that I like to deal with it, if I look at a training session, is like instead of focusing about the end goal, it's like, what are the micro pieces that make up that end goal over time, right? So just focus on the habits, the behaviors, the recipe, day by day, minute by minute, that eventually lead to that outcome. So obviously that's more performance orientated, but I guess I also look at it from when they're dealing with things off the field, is like, what can you control right now, right? And what attitude could you have in this exact moment that can help you deal with this situation? I think that's the way that I like to look at it. And again, being relationship centered, I think trying to take the time to be present, understand that I don't have the answers, but really listen and maybe just help them get that off their chest. And then maybe in the background, like, I'll do as much as I can to try to put those pieces together.
It's amazing the parallels between you and Austin and some of the other really important people in my life who I really look up to. And I've known you for all of 40 minutes now or something. But I'm noticing this theme that I want more of for myself, which is that you don't get involved in the distractions that often trigger our limbic systems. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's like, I'm not hearing a lot of like, yes, but for this obstacle. Yes, but this thing that's annoying me. Like, all I'm hearing is compassion, energy, habits, practice, servant leadership. Like, there's no pressure of politics. There's no like what's going to happen in response to COVID. The money in the business. Like, we address that, but because it's a thing and you got to pay attention to it. But the most enjoyable people I've talked to recently are the ones who are just like, positive energy, how I'm going to impact somebody. Positive energy, how I'm going to impact somebody. Are you aware of that? Like, did you practice that? Like, how did this come about?
I guess just over time, seeing how, like, where my energy came from. My energy came from working with people and trying to help them get where they want to get. And it was never about me. And I think seeing that and being aware of that over time then made me realize, like, hey, this is what I'm wired to do. Like, this is like what brings me the most joy. It's not about the titles or the awards or those other things. And I think the tough part for me being in this industry, I think the thing that really gets to me and that I want to also have an impact on is that I think coaching in a lot of realms is like an egocentric industry, right?
Sure.
Coaches think that they have the answers all the time. And I guess that's the old school mentality of do as I say, kind of process. And even now, being exposed to the youth levels, you still see that every weekend, in the sidelines, in terms of the way that coaches who are role models, who are these people of authority, but people with such great power to impact kids, the way that they act. And I think, again, just making sure that I'm following the way that I'm wired. I'm passionate about people, I'm passionate about relationships, and I'm passionate about making a difference through, I guess, like servicing or servant leadership, as I said earlier, and just following that, right? Making sure that, there'll be times where you're in national championship games. There'll be times where you're exposed to, 30,000 in a soccer stadium, and it's very easy to get drawn by all these distractions and the glamour of it, but just staying true to who you are and always come back to that, like, hey, this is where I get my joy, and this is what the legacy that I want to leave is making sure that I've impacted people by helping them become better, helping them have the resources to along their journey, I guess, is kind of where it sits for me.
So what bothers you? And how do you deal with stuff that brings you stress and pressure? Because you don't seem like that kind of person.
Yeah. I think what bothers me, what I said earlier, was the way that I guess so many coaches impact so many kids, right? So how did I fix that? Is I had a good opportunity at the last club I was working with to be part of coach education. And I also did push to try and be involved in that environment. And then as part of that is like, I try to make coaches more aware. Like, what is your role? Your role is to try and help children, help kids, help youth. Yes, in soccer, but you could be the single most biggest influence in them because they love the sport so much, right?
Yep.
So I think putting myself in that environment where I am one person overseeing 80 coaches and trying to have those conversations and being vulnerable. Hey, I don't have the answers. I'm not going to come here and tell you how to do the X's and O's of as a coach, but I am going to try to help you understand and reflect a bit more on who you are as a person and what role you play in players' lives. And I think that's the way that I can solve it, right? There's a great organization in America called Positive Coaches Alliance, right?